So, here we go. We got these two packages. Let's take care of opening them before I go and put this other little pouch here, I guess. Because it saves up some space. Excuse me. I know I should probably have something for the coffee, but what can I say? I'm woefully unprepared. I wonder. We've got a receipt in the middle of things there. So before we start up with those, why don't we take a quick look at this pile of random things. We've got Bullitt, which, unless I bought the wrong version, this would be this week's upcoming movie party, I guess. I think it's this week. You can see I got Pikmin 3. I've never really played any of the Pikmin games myself, but I have the first Pikmin game for the Wii. You know, the re-release version that was made for the Wii as opposed to the original for the GameCube. And I don't have Pikmin 2, I guess. So I might play it, or I might get one of my brothers to. Here, I've actually imported two Pokemon things from Australia. Or maybe New Zealand. Region 4, whichever region that is, which is probably both areas. So first of all, I guess it's worth mentioning that if you have the ability to play region-free DVDs, which I think I do, I just haven't tried these out yet, then the region 4 Pokemon DVDs are the best releases, period, no matter which language you speak, I think. I mean, even here in the US, we're very inconsistent. In Japan, they barely have anything as far as I understand it. And so, why did I buy this? Well, it's because, I don't know if I've talked about it before, but, yeah, see, this is how they were released. The last two episodes of the third season, that's Psychic Sidekicks and Fortune Hunters here, they, didn't come out on DVD here in the US. I was kind of looking to see what I might have missed, and since Australia seemed to have a superior Pokemon release planned over anywhere else, I was basically looking at those options. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because of my personal anime streaming server. I kind of want to better categorize all the Pokemon episodes so that if I ever want to go through it again or watch a specific episode, I actually have them all there. And I have them in proper order as opposed to the couple episodes that were moved out of place and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. So, that means that I have gone through and for a couple of them said, how can I go about downloading this? This one's Japanese only, so how I get the subtitles in there, or can I find a subtitle version versus like Beauty and the Beach, which had a dub, but the only way you'll ever see that one is some sort of crappy video capture from a VHS. And I couldn't find that, but obviously I could make do with this, which would probably be better than most things that I would download from online. And I guess actually I will leave these here because they're actual anime DVDs. Pokemon Chronicles is a bunch of random episodes that I've been somewhat familiar with, and it looked like the two options for purchasing these were from either Region 4 or Europe. And the problem with the European releases is just that they are individual volumes, whereas there's this nice, convenient set. This has The Legend of Thunder, 3-parter, which is has Raikou on it, and then a bunch of random stuff. I see some Pikachu's Winter Vacation stuff there and there, so I'm wondering if parts of these will be counted as Pokemon Chronicle and parts as other stuff, because I know that I don't have a lot of Pikachu's Winter Vacation stuff. Very confusing. I intend to figure it all out later. Because for now, I just have it because there's a lot of content. Everything on Pokemon Chronicles is something that I just don't have anywhere else. So let's start taking apart this big-ass pile over here. Start with Starzinger movie collection, which I think is kind of like the Gunslinger movie collection, which should be somewhere around here. Let me double check that real fast. Why don't I see it? Because there's no way I put that on the server. Did I? Oh. Oh well. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere around here. Maybe it's Gaiking or something like that. Kind of the same sort of idea. I think there's some older movie versions of those releases that were finally released on DVD here. I don't know much about the series itself, other than I don't think it's been released on DVD. But it is a very curious looking one. Kind of curious along the lines of just all these 70s anime that I really want to watch. I should put the time into watching. Next up, we've got Nura Rise of the Yokai Clan DVD and Blu-ray sets too. Which, these are Viz releases. So, we can already assume that they're dubbed. I haven't watched the first one, and I think Film Aficionado hasn't been as up-to-date on these releases as a lot of other releases. I think there may even be some stuff from the first release that hasn't been put on their list yet. You know, like maybe there's the DVD version or the Blu-ray version, but not both. So we've got white and purple. I don't know much about the content of the series itself since I haven't watched it yet. White and purple. So at least you get good artwork no matter which set you go with. Next up on the pile is High School DxD, unless it's supposed to be DD. This looks like a somewhat more perverted series. Funimation, so you know it's dubbed. And since it's Funimation, it says AB there. So region B people could import this apparently. On that note, yeah, this one only says A. It's kind of interesting to know. I don't know much about what this is about, but I can kind of tell that it's a harem anime again. Okay, she's losing a lot of her clothing there, and she doesn't have much either. Let's put this there so I can take a look. Is it just me, or is it the same artwork on the two discs? It's a disc 1, it's a disc 2. Okay, and that's a rather risque photo there. Next up, so these are the Blu-ray versions. Right, those were the DVD versions. What does it say? Why did I not pay attention? I can think of two reasons I wasn't paying attention to that. Yeah, it says DVD disc right there. So we go back on the inside here. Same image but black. A little bit perverted as well. Well, if I feel like putting something on that will not require as much thought and attention, that might be what's called for. Next up, we've got Fairy Tail Set 6. And I didn't watch Set 5, so I would guess at this point I am now falling behind on Fairy Tail, which is okay sometimes. I mean, like with One Piece, I remember when I would go 2 to 4 releases before I would watch it and catch up and say, oh yeah, now I remember why I keep watching that, because that show is fun. This has its moments. It hasn't wowed me like One Piece has yet, but then again, I've kind of not given it as much of a chance with the whole haven't watched it in a while thing. So I really should get back to that. This plastic is not agreeing with me. It's just falling apart. I'm having a lot of trouble keeping it together because it keeps sticking to the DVD like right there. Okay. I think I got all of it off. Worst case I didn't, and I will have fun picking it up later, because the recording of this video is not the time to take a look at that. Now these are the 2 DVD discs, and then looking for it to say Blu-ray, And Blu-ray. For a while there, she almost looked kind of like Winry. Well, upside down. Definitely not like her right side up, though. And since I've been doing this, this says it's a region A and B. Let's take this pile, do a divide in half, to take a look at Tsuritama, which I don't know much about. It's a Sentai release, so having a Blu-ray means it has an English dub, region A only, which is, I think, par for the course. Now, what's up with that? Is that like a raft built into her swimsuit or something? Is that definitely a girl? I think so. So, the Blu-ray version here we have these two discs. No inside cover art. DVD version, the first two discs look the same, and then we got a third disc with the mysterious characters from the back. And last but not least, we have Fujiko Mine from Lupin the Third. Let's see, okay, it's Lupin the Third, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, the complete series. This is, says DVD plus Blu-ray down there, and region A only. I got the impression this one might have been a late shipper because it's the one that shipped on its own. Now that's some really strange Lupin artwork there. I mean, they're usually drawn pretty skinny, but that's interestingly over the top. Huh. Interesting. So, with this first, we've got disc 1 with episodes 1 through 7, the Blu-ray, and the DVD. Rather simple picture. Just aligning it right. I'm at a weird angle now because I don't know. For some reason, I've maybe been working my back a little hard. So I do notice that neither of these had the little Funimation insert thing. We've got disc 2 DVD and Blu-ray versions with episodes 8 through 13. There we go. And I don't know much about this series other than it's Lupin the Third related. I haven't even thought about that, but oh well. Well, there we go. That's all of this week's anime DVD updates, unless you want to be contingent. These are technically not going to be put in the anime collection proper, but maybe in the import stuff. So this would be the proper update, I guess, if you call it an update, since my collection is aiming to be US primary releases. Whatever. At this point, we're just talking about silly things, I think. So, let's see. The primary thing I watched was Shining Hearts. And didn't quite do it for me. There may be an aspect of that where it's somewhat related to some series of video games. I assume RPG. That I just maybe have never seen, don't know anything about, and so didn't have much to care for. I say that, but the truth of the matter is that it's set up sort of slice of life-ish, but it reminds me a bit of Kokoro Library in terms of
trying too hard, I guess. That said, I found this one more entertaining than Kokoro Library. If you aren't familiar with Kokoro Library, that's a story about a library that's built in the middle of nowhere where nothing happens. And they're like, okay, and now we're going to look at the three sisters who go there where nothing happens. And for me, it sounded like a idea that didn't exactly work. Although I'm not sure if that's necessarily the problem here, so much as there's kind of similar vague feelings where, like, the premise is that our main characters run a bread shop, and I guess for some reason their bread shop is so super awesome that everybody loves it no matter what. And it's not because the characters are necessarily skilled at making bread, but because they put their heart into it. And now that's one of those things where whatever Shining series that this series was based off of, if kind of putting your heart into it was kind of a concept, then maybe that could be something I'm missing here. But the truth of the matter is it doesn't feel like that because, like, a storm comes and it's predicted to be the biggest one, and because our main characters deliver bread to the elves, they are able to warm the town, so everybody loves the bread shop even more, and they're like, yeah, your bread kept my family warm and comforted during the storm. And I'm like, these do not sound like the sorts of things that real people would say. These don't even sound like the sorts of things that fake real people would say. It just felt really off. And it also has that problem where you kind of feel like you've been put in a universe where characters simply exist, and you're like, you can kind of feel that there's a story there, but it doesn't really care about introducing you to the characters per se so much as just throwing them at you and saying, oh yeah, here's a dwarf, he's just going to be grumpy for no reason. And this elf's going to be an asshole. Oh, and there's these three girls, and good luck remembering their names by the end of the show. Random cat girl. Ooh, there's a thief named Blacktail. I wonder who it could be. It's not bad, it just kind of wasn't good and was at some moments just kind of face-palmingly trying too hard, I guess. It feels like a slice of life that just didn't really know how to give a slice of life, I guess. I don't know. And one nice thing about the releases, though, is they do come with all the specials. That would be the 6 picture dramas and the 6 OVA things, little short stories. Although the picture dramas were more just summaries of the events in the series with sometimes interesting little facts about the series thrown at you. More like facts about the universe, not about the construction of the story itself, I guess. And it's possible that was on the Blu-ray and not the DVD. I didn't really check because I had the Blu-ray, and when I was watching it's just like, oh yeah, there's still more stuff here to watch. I guess because of that, there was an aspect of that made it a slightly slow watch. There were other things that got in the way too, though. I mean, like, I had to show everybody Sword Art Online because I think last week, talking about it, you might have gotten the impression that I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it, and I've had a lot of time to think and talk about that one a bit more, and I have rewatched all 7 episodes since then, so I could probably talk a little bit more. I had compared it to Hunger Games under my vague notion of what Hunger Games was about, but after reading it, it sounds like it's less like Hunger Games and more like Battle Royale, which is a Japanese novel, I think, but there's at least a Japanese movie that everybody was importing. Except for me, because it wasn't animated, I guess. But the basic idea of Battle Royale is you had a bunch of people that were kind of thrown in the middle of this thing. You know, it's kind of sort of halfway. It sounds like in Hunger Games, there's a survival aspect, but the characters are maybe kind of understanding that it's going to happen and are maybe sort of prepared for it, whereas with Battle Royale, you have a bunch of people who weren't expecting to be put into a life and death situation who have to be in a life and death situation. And all those kind of have this verse concept, which kind of ignores the fact that Sword Art Online is not really either of those. It's about it's just along similar lines. People who end up in a situation where they have to survive when they weren't expected to, and they're actually more well prepared for that than they would be, given that it's an MMORPG and they kind of not everybody's like is completely green to the entire concept of playing games, and this one would probably be more workable for people considering it's a fully immersive experience within the game or within the anime itself. That's all very complicated, but the thing that kind of gives a better idea is I never really have a good ability to track the dates in an anime unless I watch it specifically for that purpose. Usually because I missed the first one because I have no context under which I would know about, remember, or care about the first one, and so I don't have a good reference point to start at. So during my playing around with Sword Art Online, I never even realized that the content I've watched, they've been in that game for 19 months. And the anime is not even halfway over, although I wouldn't be surprised if something completionary happens at the end of the first season mark. I'm not sure, and it's complete speculation, so don't pay too much heed to it. But basically, it makes me think that, it kind of gives a picture of these aren't just people who are like, oh, we're in some temporary horror movie. Even I think Hack's Sign took place over the course of maybe a couple of months. Maybe slightly more. But, it was... You kind of felt like they didn't spend a whole lot of time in there, whereas this game is long enough in order to show something very different. And that's kind of what made watching it very interesting, is not just how our main characters adjust to the situation, but also kind of just this overall feeling of how everybody else was. Like, to a certain extent, the very, very fact that they are in Sword Art Online just seems to kind of vanish. It's a very fascinating experience. But another thing I observed while rewatching it is that it kind of reminds me a little bit of High School of the Dead. Now, saying that, I should probably point out that it doesn't have the fan servicey aspects of High School of the Dead, but I'm talking more about kind of the thought-provoking aspect, where our main character isn't necessarily a genius. He's just privy to some useful information before things get out of hand, and he manages to stay calm. Also, he keeps passing all the women's shit tests whenever they're like, oh no, do this thing that I don't really want you to do, or things like that. He in both of those, it's kind of amusing to watch them sit down and not take bullshit after growing up in the 90s where, and I guess even most of the 2000s, where most male protagonists are completely jerked around by every female character in their little harem things. Now, the other nice thing I mentioned about Sword Art Online is it isn't very blatantly harem-y. I mean, there's kind of the concept sort of there, but at the same time, it's not even as central as it was in High School of the Dead. I've said before that I appreciate High School of the Dead for its ability to take the concept of the zombie apocalypse seriously, and that there's just a kind of harem forming underneath the concept because of these people grouped together, blah, 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 blah. It occurs to me that I'm talking a whole lot about anime I've already talked about before, so why don't we talk about some interesting things where I felt like rewatching a couple of things. Basically, that's another one of the reasons I didn't get a lot of watching done is I upgraded my anime media server, the server I have that keeps a copy of all my discs so I have instant access to them. Basically, 2 of the drives have been bleh, that's why there's this pile that's been growing back here. Because it's just like, why should I put it on there? I don't even know what I have to fix yet on that server. 2 of the discs are gone. I have to figure out which 2 discs those were. Turns out they were, well, not the oldest 2, but pretty close. And so, I basically got that back up and working. Disk space has been bumped up to 39 terabytes, and it's just like, okay. And for the 2 drives that failed, well, the server is a backup of the stuff, just so I have quicker access to anything I want to. It also serves as a source for the streaming server I may have talked about having made, so that I can watch any individual aspect of the server I want at any time. This allows me to do things like say, oh, I'm at work and I'm at lunch. I kind of feel like watching that scene from Paprika again, because Paprika is a weird anime with interesting scenes in it. Or kind of more recently, looking at the stuff that needs to be put on there and saying, oh yeah, that's right. I intended to rewatch a couple of episodes of Magical Shopping Arcade of Inabashi, specifically episode 12. And I didn't remember there were so many boobies in that anime. I don't know how many of those are actual boobies as opposed to moobs, but it was fun watching it and realizing there were a couple of references I probably didn't get the first time. Basically, well, maybe I shouldn't say that about Magical Shopping Arcade of Inabashi, but basically, there's a lot of movie references in that episode that I really wanted to look at and see how many I got. It's harder to get many of those wrongs than you would think, especially if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s. And it was fun to rewatch, and I'm like, it might be fun to rewatch this whole series again, but I'm not going to. And I did that for a couple of other series as well. Neo-Ranka was one of them. That's one that you maybe don't hear a whole lot about, but it's interesting because it spends the first 4 or 5 episodes with the creature just walking inland. And there's something about it which is just kind of surreal out of this world. It's not like it's attacking things, it's just kind of this intimidating thing moving inland, and kind of seeing our main characters realize this thing going on that involves them, because due to strange circumstances they were made the rulers of a certain rarely heard of small island, which just so happened to have a god on it called Neo-Ranka that was this giant thing that decided to follow them to Japan. But I think that's kind of the basic premise of how the series starts. And I just pretty much watched enough to get a lot of that and say, yeah, that was an interesting series. Just a very strange, and I don't know what it is. I'm not sure if I've seen a lot of anime which introduce the feelings that that one has. It's just strange like that. I'm having trouble analyzing it. The other thing I did was I watched the first 2 episodes of Gunslinger Girl. Now, a part of the reason for that is I remember enjoying it at the time, but I more recently remember watching the second season and the second season's OVA and thinking, something's off about this concerning how I remember Gunslinger Girl being. And if I were to take a guess, it's because for the series, maybe the art style and the animation style changed so as the girls seem somewhat more lively, I guess. And then the OVA is just like, oh, here you go, here they are in a swimsuit. I'm like, dude, you just crossed over the line that Gunslinger Girl was nice for not crossing over, where you kind of had, okay, you got little girls and they're trained assassins, but there's some subtle tragedy underlying all of this, where it may be difficult to say how human they are anymore, simply because they've been modified physically enough to be turned into cyborgs, and they're doing some sort of brainwashing thing to them. So I remember Gunslinger Girl, the first season, kind of having this subtle tragic vibe where the girls would interact humanly with each other, but their demeanor kind of seemed more slightly out of it, I guess. And there's a part of that that could just be the drawing style, especially the way the eyes are drawn. There are some ways people draw eyes which make it look like somebody's just staring off into space. And sometimes that's intentionally done, and maybe the first season just didn't do that intentionally, but that also, I thought, made it just work out a lot better, where it's like, you don't feel like there's nobody home, but you kind of feel like they're going through the motions of living life. They have very few things they actually value. A lot of this may be because of the trauma or because of the brainwashing. It's hard to say. But That's kind of what made Gunslinger Girl interesting, I think. The first 2 episodes kind of seemed like that, but I would have to watch more to know if that's how I felt through the whole thing. And there are little pieces of dialogue that make me think that there may have been a kind of fluke with the first season as opposed to a guaranteed win. I don't know. I might go back and rewatch the rest of that, but don't know yet. And I guess before I forget, I have been watching The Daily Lives of High School Boys. Basically, that's a subtitled anime, and I've been valuing my dubbed anime time simply because it's giving me the ability to do some Monster Hunter stuff that I've been needing to do, although it's been a couple of days since I've played again. And, I guess also I've mentioned that I'm repopulating some of my drives on my media server. So that's a project in itself that's caused me to not have a lot of ability to focus on other things. So dubbed anime it has been, but for that one, since it's subtitled only and I was kind of curious about it, I've been introducing a new kind of thing where I have an anime that I watch an episode or two of before I go to sleep. Because I got a TV in front of my bed and I can use it for that. And it's actually very nice. And it can be subtitled in that case because I have a whole lot less to focus on since I'm on the verge of trying to go to sleep anyways. It's almost like reading in bed. Not to say that the reading of the subtitles is like reading in bed so much as the watching of the anime before going. I did that for a couple of episodes of Stargate Atlantis while I was watching that. It wasn't so good there, I thought. Mostly because, anyways, I'm 8 episodes into The Daily Lives of High School Boys, and it's been pretty entertaining thus far. I mean, nothing about it has made me really bust out laughing, but I've had a couple of giggle moments and a couple of concerned moments. I guess like 2 examples from the first episode of one and the other. They started putting on the main character's underclothing. Well, they kind of tricked the main character into it, really. And when she walked in, it was just kind of strange. Maybe not exactly my form of humor at that point. But then another funny one was when they were telling scary stories to each other that weren't necessarily scary, and you could kind of tell that was, and that was kind of amusing. And then turned out that and that very first one had an amusingly unexpected ending. Which I guess that one I don't want to spoil. I guess I didn't really spoil either of them too much, did I? Maybe. I don't know. It's all complicated. Everything's complicated. Let's see. But that's pretty much all the things I've watched. That just leaves a question of what buying stuff that may be worth mentioning, because I can't help but feel like there was maybe something. I know that some people last week told me that the Sword Art Online release was halted, the DVD release was halted. It sounded like it was for the same reason I mentioned, but since I've since watched all 7 of those episodes, at least dubbed, I'm guessing that the problem that they noticed was that they accidentally had their images swapped and they're just like playing it careful. Maybe I should. I don't know. I don't know what disc replacement stuff would happen or would need to happen. Maybe it'll be fine. Yeah, I guess that's everything. I can't think of anything purchases related to mention, so I guess y'all have a nice week.